Hi, it's Father Norm again with another brief reflection that I hope you find some value in that can lift up your spirit, give you another perspective on everything that's going on in this crazy world of ours today. I've had many good friends through the years, and so many of them have been positive reinforcement of me, of how to live one's life, how to have a hope and a meaning and a purpose and a spirit that keeps us going through all the ups and downs of life. Well, one of those fellas I talked to, I guess about 3 or 4 weeks ago, he basically confessed to me. Now, this wasn't a sacramental confession that the priest is telling on this person. In fact, he said I could talk about it with other people because he said it was probably something else that other people felt too. He said, I confess to having become at this stage in my life a negative-aholic. I don't know if you've ever heard that word, but it struck me. And I said, well, tell me a little bit more about that. And he went on to say, he'd had a good career. He made a positive difference in a lot of people's lives in what he did. And people looked up to him. And he retired a while back and started to get involved in some volunteer work to touch other people's lives. Felt good about it. But this last year, with everything coming down on all of us, the pandemic, the way it's been dealt with, the economic crisis, the racism, and the perspectives, especially from very different points of view, where a lot of people are angry and hostile about the circumstances and irritated with each other because of differences of opinion. And he said that he just found himself over a period of time, didn't even fully realize it, not very self aware, just generally more and more starting to develop a negative point of view about everything. Not only what he was seeing in the news, but even in his own life experience. We talked about that. And it was something that a very important step. A lot of 12 steppers talk about, the alcoholic being aware, being self aware. A good step for him when he talked to me is for the first time, he was very aware that he'd gone down the negative road and he was very open to admitting it to somebody else, which was an important step. And to basically saying, as anybody in an addictive situation says, I need help. I need that higher power. I need God. I need the community of other people to help me get back to a life that is filled with a certain joy and peace and love. Not that there aren't difficulties, of course there are, but not to be totally influenced by them. And so we did talk further, and I think it was a great conversation. And I basically said, well, hey, where do you see yourself being negative? And he said, hey, just about everywhere. He talked about his family life, but he said, this was striking when I asked him some questions. He watches a lot of the news and different news channels several hours a day because he has more time. And so much of that is getting at what are real issues. But almost the whole perspective of the conversation and of the reflection from the newscast is what's negative, what's wrong, and so forth. And we don't want to be naive and Pollyanna and say, well, it's all beautiful. It's not. But on the other hand, as this fella said, to spend 5, 6, 7 hours a day watching negativity, not only about the situation, but people in the newscast being negative with each other and argumentative about what's going on, he said it was getting depressing. And as he realized that part of that he blamed on the environment. If it weren't for this pandemic, the racial issue, the economic issue, the political issue where there's a great divide, then he'd feel pretty happy and pretty positive. So he thought he was out of control. It wasn't his fault. If those circumstances would change, he would be better. But the aha moment he had is no, those circumstances are real. He had ups and downs in his life throughout the years, as we all do. And what he had to do is take an attitude check and an ego check. We talked about that because what was happening, in addition to having a very negative attitude and not seeing what was still good and loving in the world, that also in his conversations with family members, with friends, with retired buddies, again, sometimes they were getting in arguments about differences of opinion and getting negative with each other. And what he realized, he said, I also, that ego part of me, whenever we'd have a difference, I realized I wasn't just sharing a difference, trying to understand where the other person was coming from, but my ego was taking over and saying, I got to have everybody see it my way. What's wrong with them? Why am I dealing with these stupid people? All of that it started to creep up in him. Again, we talked about there can be legitimate differences, different convictions, but coming to the point where you see everybody who's different in a hostile way, uh, that's certainly not very productive, very loving. He even mentioned the point from his negativity that when he did watch some of the newscasts, those half-hour shows on the different broadcasting networks, at the end, they would usually have 3 or 4 minutes of something positive, maybe something positive about people helping each other out in the whole health issue, or people going out of the way to help overcome racial prejudice and foster understanding. But he had gotten to a point where those 3 or 4 minutes, which were only that many minutes out of the half hour, he was becoming cynical and negative and saying, oh, yeah, now they're going to talk about this stuff and try to lift up my spirit. And rather than maybe seeing it and saying, hey, maybe I need to pay attention. Maybe I need to remember there's a lot of good still going on. It doesn't get as much attention from the media and from us. Again, this does not mean we don't have real issues that we need to confront. We don't need to bury our head. We don't need to say, oh, everything's good, everything's positive, isn't it wonderful? Let's just go on. No, we need to acknowledge. And at the same time, we need to step back and look at, okay, am I appreciating or even noticing that which is good in my life? And really from a faith perspective, the Judeo-Christian faith and other faith traditions too often remind us that life is first of all blessing and gift. Even with its struggles, even with its pain, life is first of all gift. And what was happening to him in his own mindset was beginning to see life as curse, life as something to dread. Another day, now what's up? He was able to see, you know what? I'm doing a number on myself. And because he is a man of faith, recognizing that Spirit of God wanting to tell him, yeah, be concerned about these people and situations in an act of love. Believe even if you can't do everything, you can do something. Make a difference. Often, I think way back, Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People talked about our sphere of influence and our sphere of concern. And he said, even back then, we can have a sphere of concern. What's happening in the nation, what's happening in the pandemic, all of that. Again, legitimate concerns. But we can get so preoccupied with those on a macro level, and we can feel helpless and I can't do anything, and then just be frustrated and disillusioned. Covey was saying, okay, take time to look at your sphere of influence. Where can you, in these issues or other issues, make a difference? And say you got a purpose. And this fella, what he realized is that he had some older grandchildren, teenagers and a little bit older, could actually see them even from a distance. He could even, certainly they loved texting each other. And so he took to trying to come up with reflections, experiences, wisdom that he could share with these grandkids in their teenage years that possibly would be a positive influence them so that they doesn't just become negative and cynical like grandpa. And he said that helped because he could look at those little issues and say, I can make a difference. And that matters. If we touch one other human being, we need to believe that matters. Yes, there's more to do, but recognizing that and making that our focus. And so all of us today maybe can take another look. Where am I becoming a negative-aholic? Where do I need to step back, breathe, and really ask the Spirit of the living God, God, I'm sure you don't like what's going on. But help me, Lord, to realize you're there. You're in me, you're with me. Somehow we will muddle our way and get through this too. And find that inner peace, that inner strength, that inner hope that comes not because the world around us is going so great, but because in here we're being inspired by a God who's a God of love and who reminds us, is there evil in the world? Yes. Is there death in the world? Yes. Is there selfishness in the world? Yes. Can we dare to believe that there's even a greater amount of love if we pay attention and cooperate with love and bring a little more to the people around us? Yep, take a moment and see what the Spirit may be saying to you. Remember, if you're a negative-aholic, admit it, realize it, ask for help, talk to others. Wouldn't it be great if we'd have a negative-aholic little fellowship group? We'd all talk and say, hey, help each other get out of this awful addiction, that we can all be better for it and better for what we do in the lives of others. Take a quiet moment and see what strikes you from all of this. God bless.